Welcome to the Money and Meaning Podcast. It's the podcast for CEOs who want a life full of money and meaning. I'm your host, Kanae Corder, National Certified Counselor and the world's #1 clinical hypnotherapist specializing in turning stress and anger into a life of meaning. I created a virtual experience that allows me to have private conversations with CEOs that are stressed because they're singularly focused on money. And what I've found in my clinical practice is that if the CEO is stressed, the whole company is stressed. Am I right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And the CEO is stressed because society makes us believe the American dream is one thing, when it's just not true. It means different things to different people. And the truth is, the American dream is dead now anyway, because all it ever did was force us to chase money and compete with others, which left us stressed and unhappy. Nobody dreams of being stressed and unhappy. That's why I set out on a mission to guide my tribe on a transformational journey to make America meaningful again. So, if finding meaning in life is a high priority for you right now, let's get into today's show. And we're back. It feels so good to be back after a long hiatus. You have no idea how hard a hiatus is for me, but it's needed and we have to do it. So welcome back, guys, to this edition of the Presidential Experience Podcast. I'm so ready to get back to our search for meaning over money project. Thank you for being here. As I explained in last episode, there are 3 levels to the search for meaning over money: survive, strive, and thrive. And we've been talking a lot about the thrive part of that. Many of our interviews are with CEOs who have gotten past the survive, gotten past the strive, and are in the thrive level. However, I want to make sure we chronicle every level. So today we're going to talk to a CEO in the strive level of the search for meaning over money. This is a CEO conversation with Bobby Bluford. Bobby Bluford is a former collegiate football player from the University of California at Davis, where he majored in economics. He later earned an MBA from Santa Clara University, then spent a decade in corporate finance as a CFO, a chief financial officer for small companies in Silicon Valley. In 2013, Coach Bobby left his desk and office to pursue his passion for helping people become healthier and more confident. Since 2003, he has trained thousands of people through his boot camps, sports trainings, and online workouts. Coach Bobby now travels as a motivational speaker, inspiring people to taste the greatness that is their God-given right. So guys, please join me in welcoming our guest today, Bobby Bluford. Hey, Bobby.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me, Kanae.
You're welcome. Thanks for agreeing to do this. We are new friends. We just met recently and we had some things in common, some places that we have been, and now we get to hang out together.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us today. And as you may know, our first question is always, what is your idea of prosperity?
The question is great, Kanae, and it's robust in that, I'm finishing up my 5th decade of living, and I've like many people have chased this idea of fulfillment my whole life. So prosperity in many people's minds comes down to financial success. I don't see it that way. I like to think of it the same way Earl Nightingale talks about it in his books, in that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, right? Framing it in my own words, I believe prosperity lives in the fact or the embodiment of becoming what your soul says you should be, becoming what your soul is meant to be. And while using all of your achievements to help others now and into their own future. So in my view, prosperity is an attachment and a connection with with who you're meant to be in the inside. Some of that is financially connected, but more of it is figuring out what you're meant to do on this earth and then spending every moment of your life chasing that ideal purpose.
Yeah, I was wondering, I was going to ask you that. So that person you were meant to be is that equivalent to your purpose in life?
Yes and no. So
Okay.
it's a to me it's funny because I speak now, and my evolution, as you mentioned in my bio, I grew up wanting to play football at a high level. That didn't work out, or I went as far as I could, but God had
I'm
other
so
plans.
glad you shifted that language. Thank you.
Yeah, God had other plans for me. My whole notion was always to be great, and I had this vision of myself, even as a young child, a vision of myself communicating and teaching and inspiring people. When I was younger, I thought the avenue to that was going to be as a professional athlete. And I always saw myself as an athlete using that platform to inspire people, especially young people. So even as a youth, I didn't see myself driving around fancy cars and having nice houses and lots of women as a byproduct of football. I saw what that could do for me in terms of helping people. And so when that journey came to an end, I wanted something else to replace that. So I immediately shifted my mindset to becoming a successful corporate person. Didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
that meant,
Mm-hmm.
but I shifted my thought process to envisioning myself in boardrooms and on stages as a CEO or chief financial officer. But in all of that was this idea that I had something inside of me that as I chased this greatness inside of me, I knew I was going to always be at a point that was ahead of other people in their pursuit. And it was my obligation to use that to teach people. So, I think we all feel that, Ken. I think we all feel like we have a uniqueness to us. And we should feel that way because we do. And it's a matter of us figuring out what the combination of skills and talents that we have and how we're meant to use that to help others. So for me, the meaning of purpose and the meaning of prosperity and the meaning of self achievement and self greatness has always been one big ball. And it's a combination that we're all trying to figure out. And, I think in many ways that pursuit, that hunt never ends, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
hopeful it will never end. I'll die chasing that dream of being better every single day. But I tell kids that I speak to that when we're born, we have this idea of what we're supposed to be. And it's always great. Kids don't dream of being a backup quarterback or a vice president or they don't dream of being the maid to the queen. They dream of being the queen. So, and then life kind of beats that out of us. We're told to be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And once we realize and we kind of get back to that, which I hope we all do at some point, it's a matter of hunting down. That's why I prefer hunt to chase, hunting down what is rightfully ours. And that's that
Okay.
that vision and that goal and that dream that God put into us at birth that we lost. And now it's our job when we realize that to go hunt that and recapture it.
Mm. Yeah. And I didn't know if you were going to get back to the purpose. You're kind of like me in the sense that you'll go all the way around the corner to go next door because
Yeah.
that's what I was like, is he going to get back to purpose? And you did. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. I forgot where I was at.
But you did it. You did it. You wrapped it back around. And I'm glad you did because I really did want you said what I was thinking, even though we hadn't discussed it. And we teach, that there is no like one purpose. People stress themselves out trying to find this one purpose in life. And I love how your purpose was to like help people, like for kids to look up and say, oh, okay, this is something I could do. And whether that was football or whether that was corporate or whether that is what you're doing now and working in health and wellness. no matter what, the purpose itself is to be a shining example.
Right.
And it might have felt like the purpose was to be a football player.
Right.
No, the football player was the catalyst to the actual purpose. And
Correct.
then the CEO or the CFO was the catalyst to the actual purpose. So all along, the formula doesn't matter as long as the end calculation is that you get to serve and help people and watch these kids have something to look up to. Am
That's
I
right.
hearing you right?
That's right. And what I so I've been blessed with I think we all focus on the parts of us that are not perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of us do. I did a video. I'm doing videos often. I do videos often, motivational on my social media platforms and so forth. And I did a video where I outlined how we think as people, and we'll have these 25 or 30 things about us that are so awesome, right? I'm creative, I'm kind, I'm hardworking, I learn pretty quickly, whatever those are. And then we'll have
Yeah.
like one or two things that we have that are not perfect, and they'll be huge. So on this video, I like wrote the two things that haunt me. One of which is I grew up with a stutter, and it'll be huge. And then we'll have all these
Mm.
other things, and they'll be like in tiny print, right? And our brains dwell on these negatives. And
Yeah.
what's crazy is we don't realize that everybody has those.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has the same two lists, the same list of one or two things that they hate about themselves, and the 20 things that are awesome. And so I
Right.
tell people we have to work on that every day. We have to wake up and through and this is your field of study and your field of
Mm-hmm.
expertise,
Mm-hmm.
but through affirmations and neuroscience and actively working on those thought processes, we have to change that how we think, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But
By yourself.
exactly, it's
Yeah.
work. It's work,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
so back to your point in terms of not knowing where you're going, but embracing every part of it. And I think one thing that people get caught up on and mistake is that, like you just said, you don't always like. I wish we could have a letter sent to us from God that told us exactly what our purpose was, right? But we don't.
Man,
We
that
have
would
we
be
have
so
to we have
awesome.
to walk and figure it out with Him. And
Yeah.
but the key, and I did a poem about it. I wrote a poem about it. I call it "Honoring the Hours." And one day I was just laying in bed and I thought about it, and I said, people look at me, and I framed it in fitness, but everything I do, I frame in one thing, but I quickly tell people how it's the same principles for
Mm-hmm.
everything else in my life, because I believe that. I think
Yeah.
there's like 7 or 8 principles that govern everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, the reason I'm fit is very simple. I'm 48, and I've been doing this for 30 years. And I said, everybody, and this goes back to what you're talking about. Everybody wants the honors, right? And the honors can be whatever you want to have or be. That's the money, that's the cars, that's the titles, that's the corner office, that's all that stuff that we want. That's the honors. Everybody wants that. Everybody, if you ask anybody, what do you want? They can tell you tangibly what they want. That's the honors, right? Some people, a subset of that group, understands that it takes some work to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's called the hours, right? And we have these cool, fancy names, honor, these hashtags, honor the process, hashtag grind, hashtag, on the grind, whatever it is.
Oh yeah, hustle, no
So
sleep,
yeah,
all that.
hashtag hustle,
That's all the
exactly.
stuff we
So
we
they
do
have
not preach here at
the
Presidential Lifestyle.
right. So they have these cute phrases
Mm-hmm.
to define or name the hours, right? But the secret is that you have to honor the hours to the honors,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
miss that. So you have to. So it's not just about being in the library. It's not just about sitting down with your daughter and sitting through a movie that she wants to watch. It's not just about, calling your friend and not really paying attention. It's not just about, being in the weight room and not, it's about whatever season you're in, whatever part of your life you're in, you have to honor that.
Yeah.
You have to be committed to that moment, to that thing, even if you're not sure that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because only by doing that can you take away from that moment, from that season, what's needed for the next season.
Right.
So you're right. So I ended up not being a football player. I ended up not being a CFO for more than a decade. But had I not honored those moments, those seasons, I would not be where I am today because I would not have learned the lessons I needed to learn in those seasons. So I honored all 13 years of football as if I was going to be in the NFL. And then I honored all 10 years as a CFO as if that was my end result, my end journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Retirement.
And because of that, now I'm here, and all those lessons and tools that I learned from that, I bring forth to a podcast or to a speaking engagement or to a book or whatever I'm doing next. But you have to be in the moment and honor where you are so that down the road, all the stuff you've gained, you can use. And everybody
Right.
that they want to bypass all these exits and just get to where they want to be at. And that's not how it works.
Yeah, it's a journey. And so then speaking of that journey, so as we chronicle this search for meaning over money, I said earlier, some of it is the strive, you're striving to get there. Thrive is where you talked about the honors, and that's what we call the thrive. You thrive, you got it now, you're there, the awards, the accolades, the corner office, whatever it might be for you. But the strive part is the hours. The strive part is the part that we don't talk about enough. We don't chronicle enough of that. And we've had CEOs on the show talking about their strive after they've already gotten into thrive. But you and I are in the midst of our strive. We're building to our thrive. And so I want to talk more about the thrive and the mindset you and I, and people like us have to maintain in order to even get to the thrive. Right. So let me ask you about, because there was something you said earlier that I know makes the strive part a lot harder. And you talked about seeing other people's talents. That wasn't your words, my words. You see other people's talents and you see your own faults, right? You see everybody else's 25 good things and you see your own 2 bad things. And instead of shifting that, so I'm going to focus on these 25 things I'm good at, and I'm going to use these strengths to overcome those challenges. And while I'm doing that, I am also going to look at somebody. You can still look at somebody's talents, but you got to see yours too, because we're in that comparison. Right. So that brings me to asking you, when you're in this strive, how do you keep from comparing yourself to CEOs that are in their thrive?
Right.
How do you do that?
That's a great question. So there's 2 pieces, one of which is probably more pertinent. And to be honest, before I even say this, I haven't conquered it yet.
Yeah.
So people always say, well, how do you get over not being motivated? I don't always get over it. Exactly. I lose that battle sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But there's this thing in baseball called the fallacy of the predetermined outcome. And I always stutter saying that, so I apologize. Mm-hmm. The fallacy of the predetermined outcome. And basically, really quickly, what it says is if a runner's on first base, he tries to steal second and gets thrown out. Mm-hmm. The very next pitch, if the person batting hits a home run, the layman would say that had the person on first base not tried to steal second, then it would be a 2-run home run instead of a 1-run home run. Mm-hmm. Right? The truth of that story is that everything changes. Right? So you can assume that the pitcher would throw the same pitch if the person was on first base still.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So reframing that in this context is I've always lamented at the fact that I wish I had spoken better growing up. And to this day,
Mm.
I still, man, I wish I could speak like him, or wish I could, be articulate like this person. And the truth of the matter is, if I grew up speaking better or had more confidence speaking better, I wouldn't have been as funny probably, or I
Right,
wouldn't have
right,
written as well, or I wouldn't
right.
have worked out as hard. So to assume that everything else would line up in our lives if this one thing were changed is a fallacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
we have to accept that these other things that are great, that we consider good parts of us, are there many times in large part because of the things that we don't think we're good at. So
Yeah.
I've learned to kind of, get more quickly back to that realization that I write pretty well, because when I was growing up, I kind of thought I had to write pretty well to
Mm.
communicate. I'm kind of funny and charismatic, kind of because I thought, because of my stutter, I had to be charismatic and funny, right? I'm
Yeah.
pretty buff at 48, but I kind of got there because I was offsetting some of that. So I had to accept that, I can't assume that had I spoken perfectly, that all these other things that are great about me would have been there. And so that
Right.
allows me to kind of, accept that it's the whole package for all of us that makes the
Mm-hmm.
package right.
Yeah.
Do I still
And it
struggle with it?
sounds like it's a formula and a harmony, a calculation, right? It's so because of this amount of this, we call it harmony in presidential lifestyle
Okay,
because, you know, it's like a recipe. This, you add this amount of this, you add this amount of that. And if the recipe changes, like if you didn't have that speech challenge, that changes the recipe. So then that it means that every other formula, every other part of the formula changes. It's
that's
like
correct.
chemistry. And so if you put in a different amount, you're going to get out a
I
different
love that. I
result
love
or
that. Yes,
whatever. Yeah.
I love the
Hmm.
harmony. Okay, I love that. Yeah, and that's what it is,
Yeah.
because you can't change one member of the orchestra and
Right.
assume it sounds the same.
Yes. Yeah, you get me. You feel me.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean
And I
that's just
do
how.
want to thank you for using a baseball analogy because that is one of the sports that I do love. I'm not that big on football. So I
Got
thought
you.
you were
I
going to
got
use a
you.
football analogy since that's where you came from.
I'm glad. I'm glad. And then the other piece to that uh, is that, so I told you I had two ways of kind of dealing with
Yes.
that. The other part I always say to people is that, the view from the top of the mountain only looks great if you climb it. And I usually use more frank words when I say it to my class. But when you're in the middle of the climb and it seems hard, or you wish you had a better, tool to climb, or you wish you had better footing like this person next to you, but it's only like the view from that mountaintop is not the same if you get a helicopter up there. I promise
Mm-hmm.
you, it's the same exact look and sight, but the view ain't the same unless you climb it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in the middle of these strive, right, and you're going through the
Mm-hmm.
process, and everything seems like it's against you, part of what I try to think about is that this is what's going to separate me from the rest. I'm willing to go through this pain, and the journey is wanted and great because of the challenge. Like I want to be great because it's hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, if a Lamborghini was a Volkswagen Jetta, which I used to drive, you wouldn't want it as bad. Right? The
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want it is because it's hard to get. And so
Yeah.
when you're in the middle of that workout, or of that study session, or that 60-hour work week for the 10th week in a row, you have to tell yourself, this is why I want it, because not everybody can do this, and not everybody can have this.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
keeps me going, because I know that I want to be elite in life. I want to be able to come back and tell other people that they can do it. And I can't do that unless I go through what most people won't go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to point out for those of you who do take the helicopter to the top of the
Right,
mountain, that view is okay. That's your version of the view,
right.
but it is a different view. So I love the way that you stated that, because it's not to say that you won't have a view at the top of the mountain if you just take the helicopter. It's just saying that you'll have a different view. And
Right,
if this is the view you want, then you've got to climb that mountain to see the way that you thrive from those eyes. The eyes that climb the mountain,
right.
looking back over the view, are different eyes than the eyes that got dropped off on the
That's
top
right.
of the mountain
That's right.
and didn't do the climb. And some people do. We talk right now, we're talking a lot about white privilege.
Right,
And some people do have that privilege that they just get dropped off at the top of the mountain. Now,
right,
the thing is, if they have to ever climb it, that's going to be tough for them. They're going to have that same experience you just had because they never had to do that climb before. And so they are more afraid of getting pushed off that mountain. You hear me? Yes.
wow, I like that.
So
I like
they
that.
are more afraid of getting pushed off that mountain. So the way that they work and the way that they handle life is different, because if they get pushed off the mountain, they do not know how to climb back up. They don't
Right,
have the tools. Even though you might not have had the perfect tool or the sharpest tool, you had a tool. They don't
right,
even have the tools. They didn't even build the calluses climbing up. So they can't do that climb back up.
right.
They feel like if they fall off the top of the mountain, it's done for them.
That's
If
right.
you, one who has climbed, if you fall off the top of the mountain, you know your way back up. And in fact, the second time is easier than the first time.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And I'll go
that's
I'll go
such
even
a
one small step forward. I talk
take me.
to schools about this all the time, and they talk about, the depression rate of young people is going up. I've talked to too many kids at my son's school, my daughter's school. They've asked me to, like, text a few of their friends who have, talked about suicide. And
Mhm.
these are junior high kids. And, studies show that the rate of depression and suicide, attempts is going up. And so I've talked to a few schools about that. And what I tell teachers and parents is that part of the issue and barrier we're presenting to our children, and I have two teenage children, is that we don't let them figure out their confidence. We don't let them figure out who they are.
Mhm.
Right. So I think I heard of either it was a speaker, I think it was a spiritual speaker, and he said it's not our job to prepare the path for our kids. It's our job to prepare our kids for the path. And because we don't let our kids fail, we don't let them fall down, we don't let them get benched, we don't let them get D's, we're always trying to come to their protection and their aid, we climb the mountain for them. And so when they get to a point up the mountain, they have no idea how they got there and they don't know who they are. And so part of your
Mhm.
confidence is built from that. Part of and like you said, part of who you become, part of your brand, if you will, is carved out and is fortified from the climb. And so if you bypass some of that, or you get too much aid in some of that, when you get to whatever point you get to, you don't know who you are. And so that confidence that you should have, because you've kind of gone through this thing, you don't have it. I mean, all animals,
Mhm.
lion cubs, their parents make them survive.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
let go of me. Let go of me. Don't put me out hard. Right? And so we're the only animal in the whole animal kingdom that doesn't let our kids fall
Mhm.
anymore. We used to, but we don't do it anymore. And I think confidence is born from that. It's born from the fact that you survived this, and I survived that, and you survived this, and you survived that. Now when you're 14, 16, 20, 25, you kind of know who you are,
Mhm.
right? So if we don't let our kids and ourselves do that, and it's painful, I get it, it's painful, it doesn't feel good,
Right.
but we have to do it.
The Beatles said, "Money can't buy me love." But guess what? We are all using money to get love. It's true. I'll tell you why I know. I've learned in my almost 20 years of working in the financial and mental health industries that money and love go together, whether we wanted to or not. All of our actions are based on doing what we think will get us the maximum amount of love. Now, later in life, we begin to use money to get that love. From the time we are children, we set in motion a plan to get our parents' love, then our friends' love, Next, our partner's love, and so on and so on and so on. So you see, around age 14, we make a final decision on how we will handle money. And it just so happens that at that same time, we are making a decision on how we'll handle love. You might decide to be a saver. You might decide to be a spender. You may even decide to be a hero or an enthusiast. Wondering what those two are? Take the money mentality quiz. It will reveal how you use money to get love. You don't have to believe me. See it for yourself. Take the money mentality quiz. Go to presidentiallifestyle.com/quiz and see for yourself. It's free and it only takes like 2 minutes. The great thing is you'll walk away not only knowing your money mentality or money personality, but you'll also know your money strengths and challenges so you can do something about them. So go ahead, take the quiz, but don't stop there. At the end, remember, give me your email address, your best email address, so I can give you some guidance to get enough love and money in your life to make it full of meaning. Go to presidentiallifestyle.com/quiz. The link is in the show notes. Now, let's get back to today's show. Yeah, I talk about a lot on the show. My daughter is one of those that she has to learn her own lessons. And I wasn't one of those kids. I was like, tell me what to do. Give me the exact blueprint. I will follow it to a T. I do not want to mess up. Like I had to do it without any falls, without any hurt. My daughter's like, nope, I'll fall. I'll hurt. I'll hit my head. Like she don't even care. But what I love about her, and I say this a lot, she'll come back and she'll learn from her own thing and she'll give you the credit. She'll be like, you know what, Bobby, you was right. I probably should have just listened to what you said, but I didn't. And now I know even better.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that about her. It was hard though. It was really hard going through that with her. But let me tell you what it did. It prepared me as a therapist. It made me a much better therapist because that control had to go away. And I teach a course, I teach Control the Controllable. That's our flagship course. And I should say our flagship conversation. And what I learned, mostly I learned that from raising my daughter because she does not want it. She does not want she don't want you to prepare the path for her.
Right.
She just definitely wants to walk that path herself. And it's beautiful to watch in one sense, but like you said, it's so painful. It's like,
it is.
Oh, I could just make this so much easier for you, daughter.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to watch as a parent. Yeah. It's hard to let them fall.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about teenagers, because as a therapist, one thing that I've studied, now I became a therapist years and years and years and years and years ago when I was 13 years old. A girl committed suicide she was in my circle. She didn't go to my school, but she went to a friend of mine's school. And so in my brain, I was like, I do not understand why a 13-year-old would be that depressed. Like, why would a 13-year-old want to kill herself? And she didn't leave a letter, so we don't even really know.
Wow.
And so my thing was, I'm going to find this out. Now, I got distracted along the way and I did other things, and it took me to 40 years old to become a therapist, but I got here. As we talk about the journey and striving. So, but what I noticed I work a lot with teenagers and I love this population. What I noticed is that teenagers have been depressed for many, many years. As I work with my adults and they tell me what their teenage years are like, and I try to remind them what their children are going through as teenagers now. The difference is the reason why the rate of depression appears to be higher is because we're calculating it now. We're counting it. We're paying attention to it. Now we're saying, oh, wait, what's going on with our teenagers? But it was already there. The only reason we now know that the depression rate is so high is because they are taking the next step and harming themselves. They are trying to kill themselves.
Right.
If they weren't doing that, then we wouldn't be able to count the numbers and we just ignore them. Here's the thing. It all goes back to trauma. We're not calculating the trauma in our lives. We are ignoring it because of this whole hard work idea. And the strive says it feels like when I say strive that I mean work hard, but that is not exactly what I mean. I mean work well. I mean put effort in, but not work hard. And so because we have this whole work hard mentality, we have taught children, teenagers, that this is just life. Like life is hard and then you die. We say
Mm,
stuff like that, but we teach our children that this is a part of life. Like work hard, work hard, work hard. So they're depressed because they're like, well, why am I feeling like this when my parents have told me that work hard is the key to success? But is it though? Because you can work hard and still get there wherever it is you get and not love it. And so our teenagers are confused because
right,
they're like, working hard doesn't really look that great. I'm looking at my parents and it looked like it sucks.
right,
And then I'm also looking at my dad go through a midlife crisis. I'm looking at my mom go maybe through her midlife crisis or whatever she's going through. And I don't want to experience that. And they keep telling me I'm supposed to do this thing that they're doing, and I know it's not right. Meanwhile, in school, I'm trying to make sure I look good and, that some little boy likes me or some little girl likes me. And then all the friends like me. And then I'm listening to all the voices outside of me, my parents' voice, my friend's voice, the teacher's voice. I cannot hear my own voice. And because
mm,
I can't hear my own voice, it pushes me down into depression. Now, this happens
wow,
as adults as well, but it starts at teenage years.
right,
And then we get taught to cope with it, deal with it. Life is hard. So what? You can't hear your own voice. You're not supposed to listen to yourself anyway. You're supposed to
right,
listen to society. We told you what to do. Just like wrapping it back around. See, you think I can do this just like you, wrapping it back around, just like you said before, we're not supposed to be preparing the path. We're
mhm,
supposed to be preparing our children. And we haven't been doing that because society created this cookie cutter way of life.
so true,
And like
so
you and
true,
I, we got to a point where we were like, F that. We ain't doing that no more. And this is what we're doing now. We're going towards meaning. And the American dream is dead. I'm going towards meaning.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what's great about that is that, you mentioned it, I think, but, we don't, as parents and as leaders, whether you're a teacher, coach, boss, whatever, and I try to offset this by being cognizant of it, but we don't honor or encourage the journey and the process. Like we're all about results, right? So when kids and adults, when we see that all you care about is the result of my actions, then I'm less likely to try new things or less likely to
Mm,
enjoy studying or working. And so I try to make sure that I acknowledge, like on my social media, you very seldom will see me post anything about my kids' accomplishments. Like, my
mm,
son got all A's, my daughter won, but you will always see me post a quick video of them studying or working out or drawing because I
mm.
want them to understand that I'm about appreciating the process of
The
things and
hours.
figuring out how good you can be at hunting your greatness. And if
Yeah.
you do that in life, if you do that in life, the results, number one, will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, the results won't matter. Because if you're a B student and you give me a B, I'm gonna be happy, right? If you're a B
Mm-hmm.
student, that's who
Mm-hmm.
you are at your core.
Yeah.
But if you're an A student and you give me a B plus, I'm gonna be mad, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I care more
You
about
didn't do your best.
about what you're doing with with who you are.
Right.
Right. And so
Exactly.
if you're tapping into who you are and you're enjoying that part of it, then we can all appreciate that. And I think as a society, we too often focus on how much weight you lost, what grade did you get, how many points did you score, how
Yep.
much money do you make? And everybody is kind of geared toward that. And you see it on social media. So when kids see that, they're less willing to share anything that is not perfect, and they're less willing to appreciate a journey that they're not sure will end with success,
Yep.
which is the wrong approach.
Exactly, because the success is in the doing, it's or
That's
the being.
exactly.
You're in it, you're doing it. I
Yep.
remember years and years ago when I was in my 20s and I moved to New York and I was ready to move back. And so this guy that I was talking to, he said, "Man, I can't believe you're moving back. What are you going to say when people say you failed, you moved to New York and now you have to move back?" I was like, "I didn't fail. I moved to New York."
I know, right? What part
Don,
of
I
that
completed it the first day I got here. What are you talking about? I've been here a year now. Like,
yeah.
I'm more than completed it. I excelled at this. I've been here 365 days. What are you talking about?
Here's an envelope addressed to me.
Exactly. And so, and he was an older guy. He was probably about 10 or 12 years older than me at the time. And he was in his 30s and I was in my 20s. And he was like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And I'm like, yeah, you should start thinking about it like that, because it can't be about like the top of the mountain or whatever. It can't really be about that as much as it's about all the way on the way. I studied, like you said, along the way, I did my workout, along the way, I did my meditation, along the way, whatever it is, all of that daily routine, because that's what's going to make it, no matter freaking what, whether you're a football player, a CFO, or a wellness coach. No matter freaking what, that routine is what's going to get you to all the different mountaintops.
That's right. And you control that. And back to what, I have a similar word to yours. I call it controller goals. So you have
tell me
these
about
goals.
that.
So you have these goals, right? We all have goals. I want to be, 30 pounds lighter. I want to play, my son wants to play football at Oregon, and usually these goals are lofty, and they should be, because they pull us, they have gravity, they pull us toward it. But you can't control that in this moment. You can't control 20 pounds loss in this moment. You can't control being a millionaire in this moment. So you have to break those down, and I don't care how you name them, task or whatever. But you have to figure out, what can I control? I can control getting up 4 days a week. I can control studying for an hour a day. I can control whatever it is. I can control, reaching out to podcast, hosters and doing one a month. Because that gives you control of of the steps to your goal. And if you do those things, then hopefully the dream will come true. But you can't control the dream from here.
Right.
So I call them, that's your goal, I get it. But what are the controller goals? What parts of that piece of that pie can you be accountable to you for? Because if you don't do that, then you'll ultimately make excuses and say, well, this got in the way. All the things that you don't control, you allow those to be excuse. So I say, let's bypass that. Let's figure out what parts of that journey can you control. What does it take to lose 20 pounds? What are the steps? And let's do those things. Right. And that brings it back to reality. But it's kind of like how you think about things. It's just a way of controlling what's in your space and what you can do today.
Absolutely. Now, before we end, I want to ask you two more questions, and I'm going to shift a little bit, but I love that, we have the similar control the controllable or control the goals. What do you control? And that brings me to these challenges. So as we strive, you and I and many people in our same place, as we strive for this search for meaning over money, we had to make a shift somewhere. And that shift came with a certain amount of kind of like a crash. I like to say, like, for you left your desk and office, like you said, or like I said in your bio. For me, I left what looks like a very prestigious job as a financial advisor, but I didn't love it. And so a crash came. So what happens during that crash? And we can get specific to you. What happened during your crash? What was that catalyst to change for you?
That's a great question. So for me, it was two things. The one was really easily. I didn't dream of having money. That wasn't my dream when I was 8. My dream was to be impacting people. And even though, as a CFO, we had board meetings and I would sit in the conference room and there would be, 10 people in the room and I would talk to the employees, but it wasn't what I envisioned. I envisioned impacting the world. And I knew if I went to my coffin, not having done that, I wouldn't feel fulfilled, no matter how expensive the coffin was. And then number two, I think one of the things that we should all think about, a lot of this stuff is in our gut, and we know it, and we try to hide from it, but it's in our gut. And I say, if we all lived our lives to make the ones closest to us proud, what will we do? And when I framed it that way, and at the time, my son was 4, I believe. My daughter was 7. I said, if I died in 10 years from then, which is about now, what could I do to make them proud of me? And it wasn't money. It wasn't money, because the kids don't give a dang about money. right? They
Yeah.
like stuff that you give them, but they're not walking around saying, I'm proud that my daddy bought me this new pair of Jordans, right? And so, and it's a question that your gut and soul has to answer for you.
Yep.
But I promise you, if the person that I'm talking to or who hears this sits down and really thinks about it, it ain't about the vacation you bought them. It ain't about the car you gave her. Because if you say, if somebody asked her, why are you proud of your dad? I promise you it won't be because he buys me stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you can't answer that question about people who love you, like your children, your spouse, your good friends, then you're not doing what you should be doing. Now, it might still
Mm-hmm.
include making money,
Right.
but you have to find a supplement to that because at the end of the day, and I always say, we all have 5 or 10 people in our lives that impact us. Let's say it's 10. In our whole 75, 80 years of living, there are 10 people in our lives that shift our trajectory, hopefully in the right direction. It could be a janitor, it could be a teacher, it could be hopefully, 2 of those are your parents, but it could be anybody. And so for my dream of my vision for me is when I die, I want to be one of those 10 people for as many people as possible.
I like that.
And people
That's
have to live their life like that. So again, if you answer those 2 questions, how can I make my people around me love me? And how can I be one of those 10 people that impacted people for as many people as possible? And if you answer those honestly to yourself, I promise you it will have nothing to do with money.
yeah.
And that's just kind of
That's
how, so
mm-hmm.
that's kind of how when I crashed, that's what I asked myself. Those 2 questions. And neither of those answers contain a title that says CFO in it.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So before I ask you our last question, moving from there, so you survive through that catalyst and you find this new shift in this new version of success. But with that comes certain challenges and barriers. I know for me, the biggest challenge right now that I'm experiencing is building the proper team to grow this company. What would you say is a challenge that you are experiencing during this strive part of this search for meaning over money?
It's easy. It's self-limiting beliefs.
Okay.
I mean, it's very simple. For me, it's very simple because we get, the older you get, that tape recorder in our head gets more and more fortified, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you have to actively work on the barriers that prevent you from walking into your purpose. And, the older you get and the more removed you are from your true essence as a human, the harder it is. So that's easily my biggest barrier is figuring out how to get these, thoughts about why I can't be what I want to be out of my head. Because there's no
Mm-hmm.
because you put yourself in a box, and CFO was an easy box, football was an easy box, but it's a box I wasn't meant to be in. And so
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm trying to get into my correct box that God made for me, I'm still inclined to keep a leg in the other comfortable boxes.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Get that leg out of there! Come on, I need your whole
Yeah.
body in here." So it's and I think many people go through that. They feel the need to do something. Maybe start a nonprofit or volunteer or something, or write a book, and this voice tells them, that they shouldn't do it or can't do it. And I think that's a barrier that many people face.
Yeah. I like that. So I said I had one more question, but I need to add a question before I ask you our last
Okay.
very important question. And the question that came up for me while you were talking was, what have you sacrificed on this journey? What have you sacrificed to get to the thrive? Or another way to say that is like, what have you had to, because of your priorities, you prioritize, what have you left behind,
Right.
basically?
No, that's a
Mhm.
great question. So this again, it's pretty easy for me. So I watched that docu series with Michael Jordan and the Bulls,
Uh-huh.
and in it he said a quote. He said, "There's a cost for leadership," or something like that. There's a cost to leadership. And for me, my wife and kids, they could have had more vacations. They could have had more
Mm.
fun. But I tell my wife, and my kids, I didn't come to earth to have fun. I think none of us did. I mean, I don't think about, if you think
Oh,
about
I
any
don't
of
know
the,
about that.
well, okay, we can discuss it, but let me reframe before I get in trouble.
Yes.
I just don't think of, well, maybe this is a reframing of what you think fun is, or
Yes.
what we
Yes.
think fun is.
There you go.
But, so I don't drink and party. I mean, I was younger once, but I've never been drunk. But I just think that when you think of Martin Luther King and Bill Gates and Albert Einstein, I don't really envision them spending a lot of time on weekends hanging out and just passing the hours. We all get 168 hours a week, and time is limited. And I just feel like the question was framed in terms of what did I sacrifice. So I'm already admitting that the mindset is not necessarily the correct one. But I do know that my desire to tap into every part of me that's great has come with some costs. My
Mm-hmm.
desire to make sure my kids see a role model of what they can be, overcoming my fears has meant that I've had to, bypass some things that many people would see as pleasurable. So that's been the cost. The cost has been I haven't been able to do as much of the quote unquote fun stuff that my wife and kids and friends would have liked.
So really what I hear you saying is you haven't been able to follow the societal norms. Really, you had to sacrifice the societal norms, which I love hearing that because that's what presidential lifestyle is all about.
Perfect. That's it. I like the way you put it. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So, okay. So our last question, one of my faves, is what is the best advice you ever received or the advice you wish somebody would have told you?
The best, I actually learned this. I've kind of knew it. So I've learned it before, but it's been really fortified recently. But, the most important skill in life is connection with
Mm-hmm.
people, and people think it's knowledge and a particular skill set, but the ability to connect to people. And then right behind that, or 1B, is the ability to tell your story and
Mm.
lead people through that. Because when people see vulnerability in you, that creates an inherent connection with people. And then that enables you to be successful in whatever you do, whether you're a coach, a player, a leader, an employee. The relationships you develop through connection and the ability to tell your story and share with people who you really are and be vulnerable, I think is the most important skill we can have as people.
Yes, good one. And on that note, can you please tell the people how they can connect with you, how they can keep hearing more about you? And, you talked about that connection. I think you do that really well. And so I think people are going to want to connect with you. So how can they do that?
Yeah, so easy. On social media, at Coach Bobby Bluford. At Coach Bobby would probably work, but at Coach Bobby Bluford, BLUFORD. And then my website is CoachBobbyBluford.com.
All right. Well, thank you for spending some time with us. And as we chronicle this search for meaning over money, I appreciate you. And we will have a little something for you. So we'll be sending you out a gift because we know that your time is valuable. And we always want you to remember that we value you and your time and your story. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Kane. Have a blessed day.
You too. And thank you guys for staying all the way to the end. You are amazing. And you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you were here with me and Coach Bobby. And for that reason, we want to congratulate you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're learning, you're growing. So as you grow with the flow, we grow with you. I appreciate you guys. I love you. And I will see you next week. Hey, before you go, I'm wondering, are you a CEO who is starting to feel like it's time to manage your stress rather than just tolerate it? Have you gotten to a point where you rather be appreciated for who you are rather than what you've done according to society's rules? Would you like to enjoy your success with less stress? If this sounds like you and you're interested in seeing if you're a good fit for working with me and my team over here at Presidential Lifestyle, then here's what I'd like you to do. I invite you to head on over to presidentiallifestyle.com and book a private conversation with me. It's not free. My time is valuable, just as valuable as yours is. And for that reason, I'm going to pour into you for about 45 to 60 minutes. You pay a small fee in exchange for a lot of love, so we can get to the bottom of what's stressing you out right now. I'll listen to your goals, accomplishments, and even your challenges. And I'll tell you more about me and my process too. You'll get to ask me questions, and I'll give you a few tips and resources that you can start using immediately to reduce your stress. It'll be worth your time and your money. I promise you that. At the end of our call, if we believe that we can work together successfully, I'll share with you the fastest way to get to where you want to be using my program. At Presidential Lifestyle, we help CEOs all over the world navigate through stress and turn their money into meaning. To see if we can help you do that same thing, head on over to presidentiallifestyle.com or simply click the link in the show notes. All right, go now. I'll see you there. Talk to you sooner. Thanks for listening all the way to the end, my Prosperity Pro. I want to stay connected with you. Here are 4 ways. Pick the one that works best for you if you want to stay connected with me. 1. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Send them to podcast@presidentiallifestyle.com. I'd love it if you would make a 1 or 2 minute audio message and attach it to an email. That'd be the easiest way for me to get it. Ask me anything about creating a life of meaning over money, and I'll get you an answer. Remember, the email address is podcast@presidentiallifestyle.com. 2, subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends, because you guys might want to have a discussion about it, especially if they're a CEO who wants to shift from the old American dream to a life of meaning. 3, we try not to have any sponsors on this show unless they are truly in line with our values. I mean, really a good fit. So that means we fund this podcast ourselves. I'd like you to take a look at our resource page to see if there's any products or services that we recommend that are right for you. If not, no worries, maybe later. If so, please use our affiliate link to purchase. Thank you in advance for doing that. You are such an amazing person. Okay, 4 and last. If you want to know what's happening over here at Presidential Lifestyle and you want us to email you the update, then go to presidentiallifestyle.com/blog/now. And you'll see the current updated blog for the week, but you'll also see a link to subscribe to that blog. We can email it to you if you like. That's presidentiallifestyle.com/blog/now. Don't worry, you don't have to remember that link or any links. They're all in the show notes. Oh, and I forgot to say, if you're enjoying this podcast, go ahead and leave us a review and tell us how much you're enjoying it. And now for the legalese. This podcast is not to replace professional counsel. The best advice is from a professional who knows you and your specific situation. The topics discussed in this podcast are general in nature and for informational or entertainment purposes only. We encourage you to meet with a professional that you can discuss your specific situation with. Whether you choose us or someone else, one-on-one counsel is important, whether it's a financial, therapeutic, legal, or other decision. So that's all for now. I'll see you next episode. And remember, you can have wealth in all of its forms. Believe it, and you'll soon see.